The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the night still smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves. The air clung heavy and cold, and the mist rolled lazily through the small town of Blackwood, curling down empty streets and wrapping itself around the old street lamps. Most of the town was asleep, locked away behind curtains and bolted doors. But in the back booth of Murphy's Diner, 4 friends sat wide awake, the kind of restless, reckless energy only the young could summon on a night like this. Ethan leaned forward over his milkshake, his voice dropping to a whisper, conspiratorial whisper. "You've all heard the stories, right? About the house out in Blackwood Hollow?" Claire rolled her eyes and pushed a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "Please. Everyone's heard those stories. It's the same old urban legend. Cursed house, people disappearing, blah, blah, blah. It's just something parents made up to keep kids from wandering into the woods." Lucas smirked, drumming his fingers against the table. "Funny thing is, I know someone whose cousin went there once. Swears they saw lights in the windows. And get this, they said the front door opened on its own, like it was inviting them in." The fourth in the group, Jenna, shivered despite herself. She was always the most cautious, the one who preferred ghost stories in books rather than testing them in real life. "Or maybe your friend's cousin just had an overactive imagination," she said quietly. Still, her eyes flicked toward the dark window of the diner, where the mist pressed up against the glass like a living thing. Ethan grinned. He lived for this kind of tension, the fine line between thrill and fear. "Look, it's Friday night. What else are we going to do? Sit here until Murphy kicks us out? I say we go, right now. See the house for ourselves." Claire laughed, half to shake off her nerves. "You mean wander into the woods after midnight, in the fog, just to look at a pile of rotting wood?" "Sure, why not? Sounds totally safe." Lucas leaned closer. "Think about it. If the stories are true, we'll have one hell of a memory. And if they're not, at least we can say we went there. How many people in this boring little town can say that?" Jenna frowned, biting her lip. The rational part of her wanted to shut it down immediately, but the weight of everyone's expectant stares pressed against her. And deep down, beneath the fear, a part of her was curious. After all, there had to be some reason the stories had lasted so long. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, but if we do this, we stick together. No wandering off like idiots in some horror movie. Deal?" World around them seemed reduced to shifting shapes and shadows. By the time they reached the dirt road leading into the forest, the air was colder, heavier. The silence was so complete that their voices seemed wrong, too loud, as if they were disturbing something ancient. The road wound deeper, lined with tall trees that pressed in close, their branches tangled like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. Claire wrapped her jacket tighter and muttered, "This feels like walking into a graveyard." Ethan, leading the way with a flashlight, just laughed. "Relax. It's just a bunch of trees. Don't tell me you're scared already." But even Ethan's voice lacked its usual confidence. The deeper they walked, the more oppressive the woods became. Every crunch of leaves beneath their shoes sounded amplified, echoing in the silence. Shadows seemed to twitch at the edges of the light. The fog clung low to the ground, swirling with each step like something alive. After nearly half an hour, the trees finally thinned and the group stepped into a clearing. There it was. The house at Blackwood Hollow, It stood hunched against the tree line, like a corpse that refused to lie down. The wood was blackened with age, boards splintered and warped, windows broken or boarded over. The roof sagged under its own weight, yet somehow the structure clung stubbornly to life. Weeds and thorny vines crawled up the walls as though trying to drag the house back into the earth. And yet, despite its ruin, it radiated a presence, an oppressive weight that pressed against the chest, making every breath feel like an effort. Lucas whispered, "Holy hell, it's real." Claire, who had been rolling her eyes back at the diner, fell silent. Even she couldn't find a sarcastic remark now. Jenna's stomach twisted into knots. She wanted to turn back, to tell them they'd seen enough, but Ethan was already walking toward the sagging porch, his flashlight beam cutting a path through the mist. "Come on," he said, voice trembling with excitement. "Let's see what's inside." The porch groaned under Ethan's weight as he tested the first step. The wood sagged like a tired breath, threatening to give way. The others hung back at the edge of the clearing, staring at the house as though it might suddenly lunge at them. "Come on," Ethan called, trying to sound braver than he felt. His flashlight beam cut across the doorway. The door itself was crooked, hanging slightly open, its rusted hinges groaning in the windless night. Lucas grinned nervously and muttered, "Damp wood, mildew, and something else. Sour, metallic, like rust, or dried blood." The air inside was colder, heavier, as if the house itself exhaled frost. The living room stretched out in darkness. Torn curtains dangled like ragged shrouds. The wallpaper peeled in strips, curling toward the floor. The floorboards were warped, and each step echoed too loudly, as though the house had vast, hollow lungs beneath them. "Jesus," Claire muttered. "It looks like this place hasn't been touched in 100 years. Lucas swept his flashlight across the walls. Faded photographs hung crookedly, portraits of strangers with blurred faces, their eyes scratched out. Dust motes danced in the light, but for a moment Jenna could swear they weren't dust at all, but faint shapes drifting just out of focus. In the corner stood a cracked armchair, its stuffing spilling out like innards. A broken lamp leaned against it. On the wall beside it, faint words were carved into the plaster. "Leave." "Creepy," Lucas whispered, though his smirk faltered. The group pressed deeper. Every door they passed seemed to watch them, slightly ajar, darkness pooling inside each room. The house felt alive, its silence thrumming with some buried heartbeat. Suddenly, a sharp bang echoed overhead, like a door slamming shut upstairs. Claire jumped. "Nope, absolutely not." Ethan raised his light toward the ceiling. "Probably just the wind." "There is no wind," Jenna whispered. Her voice trembled. The hallway stretched farther than it should have, like the house had grown while they weren't looking. Their footsteps creaked in unison, and yet beneath it there was something else. Another step. Slow. Heavy. Following. At the end of the hall stood a grand staircase, the banister warped and splintered. The stairs climbed into pitch blackness, swallowing the light before it reached the top. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan whispered the words none of them wanted to hear. "Let's check upstairs." The staircase loomed like a black throat swallowing light. Ethan took the first step, his weight making the banister moan as though the house itself objected. His flashlight's beam flickered against the walls, briefly revealing torn wallpaper and something darker beneath. Shapes. Symbols. Impossible to focus on before the light jittered away. "Do we really have to go up there?" Jenna whispered, clutching Claire's arm. Ethan didn't answer. His jaw was set, his face pale but determined. He wanted to be the one who didn't break. Lucas followed close behind, pretending to be fearless, but his sweaty grip on the flashlight betrayed him. Claire and Jenna trailed reluctantly, their footsteps hesitant. The air grew heavier as they climbed. Each step creaked like a scream held under breath. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched unnaturally long, lined with closed doors. The wallpaper was gone here, stripped bare to reveal cracked plaster, veins of black mold crawling like rotting vines. A single bulb dangled overhead, swaying slightly, though the air was still. Suddenly, a faint whisper slithered through the silence. Claire froze. "Did you hear that?" The others looked at her blankly. Ethan shook his head. "It's your nerves." But then Jenna heard it too, low, hissing, like a voice trying to speak from underwater. The words were indistinct, yet urgent, overlapping like a chorus of broken mouths. They pressed on, deeper into the hall. The whispers rose and fell, bouncing off the walls, threading through the cracks. Sometimes the words almost made sense. "Get out. Too late. He's here." Lucas swung his light wildly across the walls, and for the briefest moment the group saw it. A shadow moving against the light. Not their own. It crawled along the ceiling, its limbs too long, its body contorted, and then it was gone. "Tell me you all saw that," Claire stammered. Ethan's flashlight flickered violently, the beam stuttering. The bulb above them flared bright, then burst with a sharp pop, showering glass onto the warped floor. They were left in near darkness, flashlights trembling in their hands. The doors along the hallway began to rattle, first one, then another, then all of them, banging in unison as though something inside clawed to get out. Jenna screamed, "We shouldn't be here!" The whispers rose into a cacophony. The air pressed against their ears, making their skulls ache. Ethan shouted for them to keep moving, but his voice was drowned out by the roar of unseen mouths. One door swung open on its own, revealing a room choked in shadows. A child's toy, a small, cracked porcelain doll, rolled slowly out, its glass eyes glinting unnaturally. The whispers fell silent. The hallway waited. Nobody moved. The hallway trembled, as if the house itself were alive, groaning under the weight of its own rage. The whispers swelled to a deafening roar, overlapping voices clawing at their minds. Ethan clutched his flashlight, though its beam sputtered weakly, as if the darkness were choking the light itself. "Run!" he shouted again, though the words sounded swallowed, muffled, as if the house refused to let it escape. They bolted down the endless corridor, doors slamming shut just inches behind them. The floorboards heaved, bending and snapping like something alive. Jenna tripped, shrieking, but Claire yanked her back to her feet. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally, like dozens of feet chasing them. He screamed, thrashing as the tar-like substance tried to pull him in. Lucas grabbed his arm, pulling with all his strength. The ooze sizzled, eating away at Ethan's shoe. With a desperate jerk, they tore him free, stumbling back. The staircase was gone. Only a blank wall remained, smooth and solid, as though it had always been there. "This isn't real. None of this is real," Claire sobbed, clutching Jenna. The laughter returned, mocking and cruel. From the shadows, shapes began to crawl, thin, skeletal figures with eyes glowing faintly, tilting their heads at impossible angles. They slithered out of the doorways, crawling on the ceiling, dragging themselves along the walls. "Stay back!" Ethan roared, swinging his failing flashlight like a weapon. The beam sliced across one of the figures, but the light only seemed to make it stronger. Its shadow grew, stretching across the floor, swallowing the group's silhouettes whole. The air grew so heavy it was like drowning. Their lungs burned, every breath a struggle. The whispers now became words they could understand. Stay forever. Stay forever. The figures closed in. Jenna screamed as one grabbed her wrist, its touch icy, skin shriveling beneath its hand. Claire yanked her free, but another appeared behind her. Lucas swung wildly, his fist passing straight through as if striking smoke. The hallway twisted again. Walls bent inward, floors warped, the ceiling dropping lower, forcing them to crouch. They were being crushed, funneled. The house wasn't a place, it was a trap, alive and hungry. We're not getting out, Lucas muttered, voice breaking.
Yes, we are, Ethan snapped, though fear cracked his tone. He shoved forward, dragging them toward a faint glow ahead. A door. Just one door. They stumbled toward it, hope flickering in their chests. But when Ethan flung it open, only blackness yawned beyond. An endless void, humming with whispers. He hesitated, then turned back, just in time to see the shadows swarm over Lucas. "No!" Claire shrieked. The figures dragged him back, pulling him into the walls as though the plaster itself devoured him. His scream cut off abruptly, leaving only silence where he had stood. Ethan froze, horror etching his face. But Claire shoved Jenna forward. "Go! Now!" The three of them stumbled into the blackness. The void swallowed them whole. The next morning, hikers found the house silent, still. On the floor of the upstairs hallway lay a cracked porcelain doll, its glass eyes gleaming faintly in the gray light. A broken flashlight rested beside it, beam flickering weakly before dying. No trace of Ethan, Claire, Jenna, or Lucas was ever found. But sometimes, when the fog is thickest, locals say you can hear them still. For release. And if you listen too closely, the house whispers back.